Welcome to the Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom, a podcast by the Lavish Group. We are a community of powerful leaders and creators. Each one of us is on a different path and from a different background, but we all embody aspects of what it means to truly live a lavish life. And we are here to share our stories. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin. Welcome, everyone, to Lavish Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin. And today we have an amazing guest, as all of our guests on this show have been. But we have today with us Miss Angela Franco, who is the president of the Washington, D.C. Chamber of Commerce since July of 2020. She is a powerhouse and has a very, very unique perspective on so many issues. And I'm so excited to bring her to you today. Prior to joining the chamber and her current position, Angela was the senior advisor for business development at the DC Health Benefit Exchange Authority, where she was responsible for collaborating with the Hispanic and business communities, as well as local and federal government. Prior to that, she was the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And under her leadership, the organization was strengthened and revitalized, as evidenced by its dramatic membership growth from just 60 members when she started to 670 members upon her departure. It also experienced a 500% increase in operating revenue during her 8 years of service, and she really led the organization in regaining the trust of its member partners and sponsors. She has been ranked so highly and has had so many rewards and awards, I should say, by multiple organizations, including given the Presidential Ambassadors for Global Entrepreneurship Award in 2015 and the Local Leader Making an Impact Award from the NBC4 Washington television station. She's also received the NFL Hispanic Leadership Award from the Washington Redskins and Verizon. Angela has served on numerous boards and commissions, too many almost to mention here, but she is also has extensive education and is a United States citizen, although she was raised mostly in Bogota, Colombia, and has such a wonderful story that she's going to share with us about that. She holds a Master of Science degree in finance and a Bachelor of Arts degree in business administration. And so in addition to that, she's also a certified life coach and a John Maxwell certified trainer, coach, and speaker. So we are in for an amazing treat today. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Angela. Welcome.
No, thank you, Dr. Erin, for inviting me. I'm very, very excited about this conversation. Very happy to be here.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you for sitting through that introduction. It's so long. You're so accomplished. And you have such a unique story, and you have had the opportunity to view the world from multiple different viewpoints. And I would really love it, just to begin, if you could share with us the highlights of your story.
Sure. So one of the most important parts of my resume that you didn't have there is that I have a little boy. He's 14. So anyway, I grew up in Colombia. I grew up in a very strong family. Education was a big deal, and values were, I don't know, that was like the backbone of our family. When I look back, we were not allowed to talk bad about people at the table. There are certain things that when I look back, I'm like, those are the memories that I have the most. I come from a big family. We're 6 siblings and my parents. My father, he was the first one in his family to go to college, and that brought a lot to my life. And then my mother was the opposite. She came from a highly educated family from different backgrounds. So I had the chance to live in 2 wonderful worlds that I think that's what brought me where I am today as a woman, as a mother, as a friend, as a daughter and sister. And then when I was 21, I moved to the United States for a short period of time. It was like a year. And I think that God was preparing me for what came next, or what was next, because doing a move the way I did it, or the way it happened for me, I always think that it was the hand of God that brought me here, because it was not in my heart or in my head or in my plan,
Mhm.
right? We are experts in building plans, but
Mhm.
he's the one that decides in my mind, right? So
Mhm.
we plan a lot and then he decides. So that was not part of my plan, even though I was born here. um, but then I went back after that year, and that just everything happened, and it was just meant for me to be here. And when I moved 22 years ago. It was May 11th of 2001, 3 months before September 11.
Mhm.
And I got here, and I always say that it was the hand of God. And from that point on, like, things started to, now I'm not going to say that they were easy, because it's never easy to move to another country, but at least I found certain people that helped me through, especially those first 5 years the first 5 years are very difficult, because that's like your transition period into a new
Yeah.
country, new culture, new language. Yeah. So, I mean, in that's really what I can tell you at this moment of how I ended up here.
One of the things that I loved about when I first heard your story, was it sounds like, so there were six siblings and a mom and dad, and education was highly valued. And I would love to hear about how how you view education, how you grew up with education, and what role that has played, for you, not just professionally, but I think as the value of education, I always say, is far beyond the degree that you get. And you have, I mean, for yes, you came from Colombia, you immigrated, and the strength that it takes to, like you said, kind of get through that transition. And yet you had such a strong foundation. And I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And what you said is exactly right in my mind. I always look, there's two types of education, right? The
Mhm.
education where you go to school, you take the classes, or you go to college, and the education of and the university of life, right? And
Mhm.
both are as important. So um, we can never. I mean, I see sometimes people diminishing other people because they haven't had the chance to go to college, or they decided not to go to college, and I don't think that's a reason to do so. For me, education is the ability we all have to change, to adapt, to accept, to embrace different people, different cultures, people that not necessarily think like us or look
Mhm.
like us, but really um, being open for everybody. In my family, like, my father, he completed a PhD in education. He was um he was in the seminar to become a Jesuit for 18 years, and we had not only that, all the values that the Jesuits bring, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, why it was so
Mhm.
impactful. I never understood until later on, right? Because you grow up and you never really understand until
Mhm.
something happens and you say, now I know. And then
Mhm.
on the other hand, so my father was very much into, you have to be prepared, learn another language, travel, be exposed to different people, not necessarily your inner circle, but open your mind up to whatever is out there and is available, and have a world. A world is understanding that the world is big, and the way you live, the way you think, is not the common.
Mhm.
Is yours, right? It's for you, but everybody
Mhm.
else does it differently, and it's fine. It's just different ways of being, different ways of living. And then for
Mhm.
my mother, what was important was that, we were dressed properly, and then we behaved properly, and we ate properly, and, other things that are
Mhm.
also important when you're developing a career or a life. I mean, not absolutely necessary for happiness, but something that helps you through your path.
Mhm.
And then years later, not a long time ago, like 4 years ago, I don't know, somebody told me about a book that is called Leadership by the Jesuit style. And then
Hmm.
when you read the book, it's a fascinating book because the book talks about what are the principles of the Jesuits. And I read the book and I was like, that's exactly the way I grew up. And it's simple. It's you adapt with a change, right? You look after your community and then you work on you all the time. You self develop, like your self consciousness and understanding who you are is what helps you and the world transform. Because the more you know you, then you understand what your gifts are, what your purpose is, and you don't get jealous about what others are doing or if the other one is better than you or not, because you
Mhm.
understand what you are about and that there's a place for you, unique being in the world. So that's how I view education in my life. So when I look at my son and the way we're educating him is a citizen. I always call it the citizen of the world. That is a
Yes.
boy that is able to transform, understand that we have differences, right?
Mhm.
And understand that if he gonna go to school, he has to be passionate about, not just go to school and say, "Oh, I passed this, I passed." Like I did too,
Mhm.
but we did too in some right in
Yes.
some subjects at school. It's like, okay, I just
Yes.
want a three, period.
Yes.
But I might, just enjoy it and find something that you're passionate about and something
Mhm.
that you like to do, and living life with more on the day by day, but living life more with a purpose.
Mhm. That is so beautiful. I love that. Well, and I say this in no patronizing way, but I just love that you have that philosophy about life. It's uncommon, unfortunately, or I should say it's not common. As
Mhm.
common as it would be wonderful if it was. I love what you said. Essentially, you're talking about compassion for others and their beliefs. And you said adapting to change, community, and knowing yourself. And I have talked so much in my workshops and with clients about, I literally say, like, we have no better use of our time in this life than to know ourselves. And I think
Mhm.
what you're talking about, because I can sense this, the deeper part of it is, it's more than just I like this, I don't like this, or what we very cliche talk about being authentic, which is I know what I want to do and I know what I don't want to do. But it's
Mhm.
much more about what is my unique expression? What is
Mhm.
my unique contribution in this crazy world with everybody else trying to get some and be somebody and prove something, or even just survive? Where do I look at all of that and have my relative truth, in the midst of all of this, and pivot when things don't come up the way that I want them to or the way that I foresee them, still contribute to community, and continuously be discovering myself?
Exactly.
And that is so profound.
Mhm.
And that is exactly why I imagine you are an amazing leader. And you've talked about that self-consciousness, and that can have, you know in the English language, we talk about being self-conscious as almost like self-critical, right? Like it has, but you're talking about a very different meaning of that. Could you explain that for me, or for us, for the audience?
Yes. And self-consciousness, being self-conscious in my world
Mhm.
is understanding who you are and your actions and why you take them.
Mhm.
Like, there's an exercise that I do almost, I can tell you like almost every day, if not every day.
Mhm.
That is, I sit through, I sit at night and I think through the day. There's some days that you go by and nothing major happens, but if there's situations that you do and you feel that sense of discomfort or that sense of happiness or that sense, so I'm like, what happened? And I always go back and say, what happened? You know, could have done something better, could have done something, differently. And as you go through that process, there's some things that you understand about you. I am from Colombia, I'm Latina, and we bring certain things with us. For example, one of the things is that you always try to give more, right? And it never is enough. So I've had to learn to understand where my limits are, right? I always like going above and beyond the call of duty because that's kind of my being, but is understanding when you need to stop and you say, they really cross a line with me, right? Because I was always like, oh, maybe I did something wrong and I was hitting myself hard. And I'm really in a place now that I'm thinking, okay, this is my limit, right? And maybe I'm in the right path. So being self-conscious in my world is understanding who you are, why you do things. And it is always growing, right? It's always evolving, because sometimes you think, I thought 10 years ago that I was in a great level of consciousness. Now I'm 10 years later and I go back and I'm like, I was not really in that level of consciousness. And then as you go, the most important thing is that with the tools you have, you develop that consciousness all the time, and you are aware of your surroundings. And it's not like a hard work, like you have to think about it, but it's something that is part of you. It comes to a point that it's just part of you, of who you are.
Right. Right. So that self-consciousness becomes your consciousness, essentially. And it becomes something we develop an awareness of ourselves. And then over time, through that practice of that self-consciousness, it becomes part of us and part of our personality and part of how we just operate without having to think about practicing it so much. Is that what you're saying?
Or pushing it. Like I'm gonna put an example. This week I had a lovely conversation that I want to have with one of the people that is close to the chamber, because that person wants to go places, right? She wants to grow and she wants to, but the way she was doing was pushing, not being, thinking, not feeling. And you don't go places thinking and pushing. You go places feeling and being. And that's what I tell everybody is like, you don't have to do, you have to be. And when you are, right, and that movement for me has been a transformation as well. Yes, there's some things that I have to get done, right? But I don't have, at this moment in my life, I don't have to prove, you see, to prove anything. Like I'm in a place that I'm being, and it has been so rewarding, just being, just being.
Yes. That was an absolutely beautiful example. And, Angela, I get so excited about these kind of conversations because this is exactly what I try to get the women that I work with to understand. And it definitely requires a certain level of self-consciousness for them to get that. I always tell people the how is none of your business. It's about getting to that place where you're in an allowing, right? And you're talking about just being and allowing. And I think you and I both know that there are there are religious scriptures or scriptures in the Bible that talk just about that. And I was personally raised in a very conservative Christian household, and I learned about all of that. Ask and it shall be given and all of that, but I didn't understand. I wasn't taught it in a way that was not kind of liturgical, but was much more conscious about what that really meant to be still and just allow and know that in the deeper knowing and the deeper discovery of ourself is where all those things are added on to us, right? As the scriptures say. But it is whether or not we ascribe to a certain faith or religion, what we do know now is that is metaphysical and scientific truth. Like, we're starting to really see where those principles actually work, and people can see those from a much larger perspective. And I love what you saying that, because my next question was going to be, how do you dovetail the personal awareness into leading others in an authentic way? And I've heard you talk about leading from the heart. And so that example that you gave is a really poignant way in which you have illustrated leading someone from that heart, that feeling. And I think it's so hard as business leaders. I think it's hard as entrepreneurs, or even women who are successful, to get out of the head and into the heart, and to get out of that logical, linear way of thinking. And to do that, do you have any tricks or hacks for how you teach people to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been attracted to, I started very young, like doing this kind of work. Like,
Mhm.
um, I started when I was 15, and then I really started transforming myself when I was 25. But I
Mhm.
was curious. I was curious because I felt empty in my heart. And I was
Mhm.
like, I want to know who I am. I don't know. I was like, I felt like something was missing. You know, when you feel
Mhm.
like your soul is full and your body is solid. I mean, it's something that I feel internal, like I have a solid soul, like I have a solid
Mhm.
being. Yes,
Mhm.
things can happen. I can cry, but I'm not gonna be able to be moved that easily because I have my values, and I have who I am very inside, like strong. But in
Mhm.
order to build that strength within, that's when you start doing all this self-development. And I
Mhm.
did, I mean, many courses and classes, and I would go on retreats on weekends, and I still do it. I do something every year, and every time I can, I do that. I'm surrounded by people that are very much into the emotional work. One of my best friends, we have a nonprofit to help Latino women, and
Mhm.
she's a clinical psychologist, and we talk a lot, and having those conversations with her are very meaningful to me because it makes me
Mhm.
a better person, a better being.
Mhm.
And I have another one. I had a priest that I worked with for 3 years, doing a lot of work in self-consciousness,
Mhm.
and what you do when you're conscious, when you're not. So I've worked a lot in myself, and
Mhm.
I didn't know where that was taking me. And that's what I always advise, especially young women and young people that are in the workforce. They're like, I want to get to go and be the president. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying they cannot go there. We all can go wherever
Mhm.
we belong, right? But
Right.
the most important thing is not putting all your efforts in becoming the president, because then you forget about you. And you can
Right.
be the president, but then you're going to be miserable. So, what
Mhm.
about if you get to be the president? Maybe it's going to take you 5 more years, whatever, but you're going to be in peace, because once you get there, it's because you belong. And for me, like, I was always behind the scenes. And once I started doing all this work, life has taken me to leadership, not because not because I looked for that place, but it has been more that I've been placed there, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking about the way that you fell upon your authentic purpose.
Exactly.
Because I think, like, for me, my father had brain tumors when I was growing up. He had multiple brain tumors and lots of brain surgeries. And I was so enthralled and amazed by his neurosurgeon that I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And that's my story is very much like what you were describing, which is like, I was all about, I'm going to go to college. I graduated from high school early so I could start college. I had a full scholarship. Then I went to medical school. It was all lined up for me, down to what I was going to do when I retired. And life has a different plan, obviously, most of the time, but we can have things that happen to us in life that seem to point us in one direction. People make decisions for their trajectory of their life for all sorts of different reasons. But what you're describing is an awareness of yourself such that you can have patience and develop yourself first, and then discover what it is from that place of your true self that you are able to contribute to the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That would be so ideal. So ideal. And yet, I imagine that a lot of people that you have worked with or come across through the chamber, business leaders and stuff like that, are maybe past some of that point. And so how do you approach it then? People have transformations all the time, right? For different reasons.
They do.
And different catalysts. So what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I think that, part of the way I connect with people is just being genuine. Yes, I have a job to do. I need to fundraise. I want to, I have a goal to fundraise for the gala. But I know that people can read eyes. I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you meet somebody, you look at them and you're like, there's something that doesn't sit well with me. There's something, or if this person is really genuine, they're really passionate, they're here for the purpose. So for me, I want that for my life. I want to sit with somebody and be able to look them at the eyes and say, listen, I do this because I care. And then how are you going to lie? Nobody, you can lie to some, but not to all. And that's right. That's kind of the way I look at it. And there's some people obviously that I have very, very close to me. And there's wonderful people that I've met in my, in my career that are amazing. The other day I met with the president of a bank, and he wrote this book, and we ended up talking about this, and he says, oh, I wrote this book and I bought it and I read it the same day because I cared and I want to learn more about him because that's who I am. But that's what leaders need to confront themselves and say, what kind of a leader do I want to be? Understanding the responsibility that takes. Because leadership, being in a leadership position, is not about saying, oh, I'm the leader. It's a responsibility because your energy goes across, and people look at you and they see how you act and how you do things. And it's like just being true to you, being true to you, and, really wanting the best intentions for everything you touch and for people that you work with. That's kind of the way I build relationships. So sometimes you get certain people close to you, and then some people leave you.
Right.
Or you leave them.
Or you leave them, right? Your paths diverge, as I say.
And it's
what you're
fine.
really just
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that is fine. Friendships and people that you have around you are an extension of you. So looking at who you have around you is key.
It sounds like what you're really describing, Angela, is presence, and like a deep presence, like a very almost, I hesitate to say this, but like spiritual presence that someone has with someone else. It's not just, oh, when you're talking to me, I'm looking at you in the eye. But there's, as this conscious leader, to be in the presence of other people and have a presence such that, yes, you can be magnetic. Yes, you can have that kind of it factor that people talk about, that people want to be around you and all of that. But there's a deeper knowing that comes with this level of presence that you take with you wherever you go. And as you said, it is a part of who you are. It's not like, you're faking it till you make it, before you go
Exactly.
onto a stage or something. It's just that, this doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else or anything, but there's a deeper knowing and a deeper understanding that you understand that you have, and that the responsibility that you have as a leader that other people don't know. And it's that presence that is magnetic, that draws people to you, that makes people want to follow you as a leader. And I can definitely see how you have that. It's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
No, thank you for taking the conversation to this place.
Mhm. I'm wondering, so you're a person who's been raised by, sounds like, very strong people. And then you've had a lot of education, you've been around a lot of educated people, and you are constantly in an environment where strong personalities and agendas are present, like you're in Washington, D.C. Um, how do you stay in integrity with yourself first and then with others?
Let me graphically put up something that's kind of the way I
Okay.
look at it when I have to answer this question. There's a lot of noise out
Mhm.
there, right?
Yes.
Everybody has an opinion. Everybody thinks they're right. Everybody, because that's kind of the way the world has become, right? Or they have a voice, or they have social media, or and they think they're all right. And money plays a very, very important role here. I always think that power and money are what takes people away from their purpose.
Mhm.
And what I do is that I'm always walking on a bridge. When imagine a bridge that
Mhm.
goes in staircases that goes up, like, because I'm always closer, and that's my
Mhm.
self-conscious being. And then underneath me is everybody else fighting.
Mhm.
So, it that helps me to keep myself out of trouble.
Mhm.
And I don't that's kind of the way I do it. And I
Mhm.
do it mentally. And I always say, do I need to get involved in this fight, or do I don't get involved in this fight?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the way I I do it.
Mhm.
I don't know if it makes sense to you, but that's my
No,
thing.
I think it makes total sense. You're talking about a, a conscious awareness of where you place your energy and where you see an outcome being relevant to not just to your own life, but like, what's the good that's going to come out of this? And is it
Hmm.
worth my investment of my time and my energy and whatever else would be required of that? And
Yes,
you're talking about the opposite of reacting, which is how, especially when we're stressed, we're tired, whatever, like it's so easy to react, react to something, instead of kind of tuning in and taking the road that leads to the highest good, that leads to the highest self, right?
exactly.
That's what you're talking about.
And then, sometimes, yes, you go, you take people with you, people that want to take with you.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that I'm perfect in any way, because we all are human. So there are moments that I make mistakes, I can come across strong, or I get emotional, but that's not my normal being.
Mhm.
It's like, because that's the other thing you have to look is what's your normal behavior,
Mhm.
your usual behavior.
Yes.
If it is something that happens sporadically, then you're like, okay, what happened? Because there's some people that can take you out of the bridge,
Right.
right? There's some people that pulls you down the bridge.
Mhm.
There's different circumstances that can take you out of your lane, but that's when you reconvene and you say, okay, what
Mhm.
happened? What did I
Mhm.
learn from this? And then get back on the bridge.
Mhm.
But when you spend all your energy, fighting, or thinking about what others are thinking or whatever, you lose your north.
Right.
And I'm not saying that sometimes we don't care, because we do. We right, we're humans. It's
Mm-hmm.
thinking that we don't care is just not human.
Mm-hmm.
I do care, but that's not the way I operate. I
Mm-hmm.
care, but I move on. And then sometimes you have to put those thoughts behind and say, okay, is this serving me well? No. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in a drawer here, and then I'm gonna keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I do it. And I have a circle of support, a very close circle of support that includes my sisters. I have best friends since childhood. That, yes, sometimes we have our differences, of course, but if we support each other, of course. So having
Mm-hmm.
that support system that's close to you, that loves you and wants to see you grow, of course,
Mm-hmm.
it's very important.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. So true. Thank you. I'm wondering, I know you said you have a 14-year-old son, and
Hmm.
I have a 17-year-old son, and
Oh, you do both?
I have one 17-year-old son, yes, and I have two daughters. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter.
Oh,
Um,
so you have three?
three, yes. And so I often I wonder, because I work with women, I am often talking about kind of, maybe what would be considered feminist principles of things. And I have a very strong passion for really kind of changing the lens on how we view feminism, and really coming to it from an enlightened place. And I believe that includes males and females, and especially our young our young girls and our young boys. So my question is, how do or what do you see as the most important things that we need to teach our young daughters and our sons? And as powerful women, what's our responsibility to them?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a very personal view on these. I think
Mhm.
that there's a difference between being a strong woman and a feminist. Okay.
Mhm.
I think that being as our roles, I think that the role of a woman in a society is to keep it together, to keep it
Mhm.
together with our children, to keep it together with our families, and yes, to develop our professional careers. But I believe that if we have children, that's the first priority.
Mhm.
Having our children, raising them to be good citizens, and helping them move forward. I
Mhm.
believe that women need to have opportunities. It's important to have your job, to develop your career or your purpose, whatever you want to do. But I
Mhm.
believe that family is first, and I'm
Mhm.
concerned about how we have put fame or jobs or money in front of the basic family and kids and children,
Mhm.
that we need to do, because that's the
Mhm.
basic of education, the basic of the
Mhm.
society. And
Mhm.
women that go out and they don't, I'm not saying that men cannot stay, but it has to be something that is agreed upon, as a family, and say,
Mhm.
okay, this is the way we're going to
Mhm.
do it. And I think that's when the women needs to have a very important role. Um,
Mhm.
so I believe in being strong. I believe, in equal pay, but I believe that if we have
Mhm.
children, we need to put the effort that they need to raise them as citizens of the world.
Definitely. Yes. What do you feel is the most important thing as we teach them, as we educate them and live as an example for them as these citizens of the world?
Yeah, no, I just
To
say, just mhm. So I'm gonna tell you what I do in my case. Okay,
Okay.
they
Yes.
learn through watching you. You
Mhm.
can scream, carry on, do whatever, but they learn from you.
Yes.
right? If you I mean, that's really, if you steal, they're most likely they're going to end up stealing. Obviously there's a
Mm-hmm.
growth, there's a time of growth, so they have to, some things they have to learn that you have to teach them, but at the end of the day, think of you what the things that you remember the most is what your parents did, right? What they did, the
Yes.
way they acted, the care they had for others, um, you
How they
know
made you feel.
how they made you feel, that hug they gave you. Hmm?
Yes. Yes. So it is living our life as an example. That's the
Exactly.
greatest thing that we can teach them, is what I hear you saying. And I'm in total agreement with that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, as a mother, and I'm sure you've had similar experiences, is that when we feel like we've messed up, when we feel like we have fallen short of living that example, it's painful, and it's so easy to feel like a failure, or to feel like you've caused some sort of irreparable harm. And I've felt that way on occasions with my children. And
Tell me about
there,
it.
what was that?
Tell me about it. I mean, I just think also that, to the point you're saying, my
Mm-hmm.
mother never apologized, right?
Yeah.
They just did it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes if I make a mistake, I will tell my son, I thought through what happened yesterday, and I think I went a little far, and I apologize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And he does the same. He
exactly.
says, Mom, I thought it through, and I'm sorry. So it's fine. I think that having those conversations with your children, understanding who's the mother, I mean, I think they're important to
Mhm.
have those types of conversations.
Right. And that's part of teaching them to be mature, as we say, citizens of the world, right? You take responsibility for your actions, and you don't just pretend it didn't happen or hope that everything's going to be okay, and allow people to build up resentment and all of that. So we do that with our children as well. And it's wonderful to be able to see, because they have siblings, that they very actively know how to do that with other people, and that is because of practice. So that's exactly what I was hoping to talk about there. I have just two more questions for you. The first one is, what's the most heart expansive, transformative thing that has happened to you in your life?
I think that the most difficult thing for me has been, I'm divorced. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
understanding that it was not healthy and it was not good for my life was very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I yeah,
Yeah.
that was very difficult for me. I mean, I've been
So it
divorced
was
for 4 years
difficult for
now.
you. Mhm.
The process of understanding, forgiving, and then moving,
Mm.
moving out. That was
Mm.
very difficult for me.
Mhm.
I mean, I did it. That was not
Mhm.
easy. It was not
Yeah.
easy at all.
Yes.
And then
Mhm.
managing a relationship that is healthy for everybody, for my son, for him,
Mhm.
for me, for our circle,
Mhm.
for my son's circle, because you have to make a lot of personal sacrifices for everybody's well-being. But yes,
Mhm.
so that I think that
Yeah.
that was one of the most difficult experiences.
I think that, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that, such a vulnerable experience. And I know that there are so many women in that situation that are going to resonate with what you said, even though what you said was very brief, but just to be at that place where it's like, because the question that I asked you was, what was the most heart expansive, transformative thing? And you went directly to the most difficult thing for you. And I think that that really shows that level of self-awareness and consciousness that you have to go directly to knowing that it is the most difficult situations which expand us the most, which transform us the most, even though, like you said, 4 years later, you've been divorced for 4 years, and now you're still in the daily thing of trying to maintain relationships that are healthy for everybody and your son and all of that. And that is, I mean, I don't know, when you talk about something about your own heart, and then you have the heart of your children involved, and other people are watching you and how you're handling this, anything else that could be more heart expansive, because there is so much sacrifice. There is so much really, really taking a hard look at our feelings and our reactions, and being in control, and sometimes not being in control and letting that be okay. And that is not anything that I thought you were going to say. I didn't know what you were going to say, but it's very, very meaningful. Very, very meaningful conversation, Angela. Thank you so much. The last question I have for you is, what does success look like for you now? What's the impact that you want to make? And what do you see that could possibly stand in your way?
I never think about what's going to stand on my way, because if it's not my way, then it's not that way.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. I just want to continue to develop myself, to grow, to have my friends around. I love what I do, that is helping businesses. I love the business community. I love people, and that's where I would like to go. If you ask me, oh, what position you would like to have, or things like that, I really could not answer that question. I think I want to keep working on me and in my family, and continue to build a great community around me.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Angela. This has been a truly meaningful conversation, and I think it is going to give our listeners so much to think about, that is not something that they could find on any just run-of-the-mill self-help podcast. I think that I just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being so open, so vulnerable, and you have so much wisdom to share. And I thank you so much for sharing it with us.
No, Dr. Erin, to you and everybody, thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much.
The Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom is brought to you by Dr. Erin Martin and the Lavish Group. To find out more about Dr. Erin and how you can create and embody a lavish life for yourself, visit thelavishgroup.com. And don't forget to search for Lavish Leader in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at the Lavish Group, thanks for listening. And remember, you too can live a lavish life of fulfillment, beauty, and love.